A couple years ago, Don Lemon, or as you know, I call him Donna, said something on his platform that kind of shocked a few people that it actually came out of his mouth. And that's when he came out and said that white men are the biggest threat to America. Now, I don't know if he said racist white men or if he just said white men. And I think what shocked a lot of people with him saying that is the fact that, Don Lemon is married to a white man. And people was kind of worried about like his positioning over at CNN if he was going to get reprimanded for that, but I don't think he did. I don't even think he took back what he said, to be quite honest. That was one of the few times where many people who were not on Don Lemon's side with almost anything he has said were actually in agreement with him. Which segues me into this article right here with this headline. It says white supremacists and racist terrorists pose greatest risk of violence, FBI warns. The date June 10th, 2020. I wanted to make sure that that date was in there and that this wasn't old. The reason why I said that is because there have been times when the FBI have come out and said this headline, but the question that needs to be answered is, what are they going to actually do about it? Because they struggle to get certain organizations onto these terrorist lists. Whether they actually genuinely try to get them on there or whether they tell people they're going to put them on there but end up never doing so at the end of the day. What they're telling us is nothing new. It really isn't. It's nothing new or surprising to anyone. If y'all remember a couple months ago, it had came out that some of these same type of people were saying that they were going to use the virus as a weapon against non-white individuals. But now they've revved up even more because now their backs are against the wall with everything that's been going on with the last maybe 3 weeks. They are spiraling out of control. Not that they weren't before, but right now they really are on edge because they're losing one of their last line of defense, which is law enforcement. They probably never thought that day would actually come when the topic of discussion of defunding the police was actually going to be discussed. That was probably one of the last things they ever thought they would hear, whether from lawmakers, government officials, or even regular, average, everyday citizens. Shoot, I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect that conversation to come up. But here we are. And now they are going nuts. I'm going to read this article and see what else we can find out. White supremacists and racist domestic terrorists pose the largest threat of violence in the United States amid nationwide protests across the country, according to a new intelligence bulletin. The bulletin, which was sent to local law enforcement by the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and National Counterterrorism Center, and reported by ABC News, warns of threats by left-wing and anarchist groups as well. But it barely mentions Antifa as a potential violent group, though federal lawmakers have called for the loosely affiliated movement to be labeled a terror group amid nationwide protests against police brutality. We assess the greatest threats of lethal violence continues to emanate from lone offenders with racially or ethnically motivated violence extremist ideologies and domestic violent extremists with personalized ideologies. In addition, militia and right-wing racist groups are seeking to start a second American Civil War by targeting protests, according to the report. Militia extremists and groups who advocate a belief in the superiority of the white race have sought to bring about a second civil war, often referred to as boogaloo, by intentionally instigating violence at First Amendment protected activities. Widespread media attention and online post-B extremists are likely to contribute to potential violent acts, it adds. The memo adds that left-wing and anarchist groups pose the greatest threats to police officers and the potential destruction of police and government property. Well, they need to look into the police officers as well as being a threat to this establishment. You saw that rant that union, whoever he was, I forget what his title is at this point. It really doesn't matter. The one that was in New York going off saying that we're getting tired of being treated like criminals and animals. Well, welcome to the club. And trust and believe me, I highly doubt that y'all have even suffered greatly like you've done your own citizens, especially those who look like myself over the years. Y'all didn't earn that title of one of the most corrupt police departments for nothing. Remember, the NYPD is the place where the birth of stop and frisk began. Anarchist extremists continue to pose the most significant threat of targeted assaults against police, as well as targeting government buildings and police vehicles for damage, sometimes with improvised incendiary devices. Yet, you just had police shove this 75-year-old man to the ground, causing him to split his head open and bleed out of his ears, and they just casually walked past him. And we can't count how many times they've been on the giving end of police brutality when it comes to killing unarmed black people. And now notice that now they're starting to go after their own, but mainly those who are protesting. The document only mentions the existence of Antifa once in a footnote, according to the report, noting that some anarchists self-identify as Antifa. Amid the uprisings, Antifa has been targeted for 45, who has threatened to label them a terrorist organization. But notice he won't label the Klan as a terrorist organization. As far as he's concerned, it doesn't exist. But when you look deep into these cabinets, into these courthouses and these precincts and these districts and these everywhere else, doctors, lawyers, hell, teachers, you'll be amazed at what you find. And you want to know how I know many of them are like that? Because when something like what happened with George Floyd occurs, they can't wait to get on social media and leave these very inflammatory racist posts or post pictures of them posing like they're kneeling on somebody's neck. And like I said, most of the people that do that pretend and put on this facade that they aren't the way that they are being portrayed. I guess that's how it is to be in America. Lie and deny everything when your back is against the wall. But back to my original point, if the FBI is not going to do anything about these groups, what's the point of constantly putting this information out here? It's just a waste of reading space. Because like I said, we have seen these write-ups before, but still nothing is being done. And this picture that you see on your screen, this is from 2017 in Charlottesville. That was one of the first times that they mentioned how these extremist groups, how terrible and, out there they are. And that was 3 years ago. And they're still out there. They're not being reprimanded. So the biggest question is, why aren't they? Like I said, you can put all this lip service on paper out there you want, but if you're not going to actually stop them, then what's the point?